"This is just a costume," the airport manager sneered, tearing up the tomb guard's first-class ticket. Forced into economy, a mid-air crisis erupts. Can a disrespected hero still answer the call when duty finds him at 30,000 feet? The polished floor of Chicago O'Hare International Airport reflected the harsh fluorescent lights, turning the bustling terminal into a disorienting hall of mirrors. Through it all, Sergeant Ethan Cole moved with a purpose that felt alien to the surrounding chaos. His navy blue dress uniform, a symbol of profound sacrifice, was so crisp it seemed to hum with silent energy. The Tomb Guard identification badge, gleaming on his chest, was more than metal, it was a sacred vow. At 28, Ethan was a living monument, a sentinel even when far from the hallowed marble of Arlington National Cemetery. He was traveling on short-notice orders for a memorial ceremony, a duty that required him to wear the ceremonial uniform. He understood the stares, the whispers, the photos snapped from a distance. To most people, he was a spectacle. He had learned to erect a wall of professional indifference, his mind a fortress of discipline. He approached the first-class check-in counter, his posture a perfect parade rest. When his turn came, he presented his military ID, passport, and ticket confirmation with precision. The counter agent, a young woman named Karen Walsh, froze. Her practiced smile evaporated as she took in the uniform. One moment, please," she stammered, her hand immediately reaching for the phone. "Martin," she whispered into the receiver, "I need you at first-class check-in." "Yes, now." Ethan remained motionless, his face impassive, but a familiar tension coiled in his gut. He had seen this before, civilian awe quickly curdling into suspicion. Within minutes, a man in an expensive but ill-fitting suit strode towards the counter, his name tag reading, Martin Brooks, Terminal Manager. Brooks's eyes swept over Ethan not with curiosity, but with a palpable disdain, as if he were looking at a spill on the floor. "Is there a problem?" Ethan asked, his voice calm and steady. Brooks ignored the question. "Sir, may I ask the purpose of this attire?" he said, gesturing vaguely at Ethan's uniform. The word attire was laced with contempt. "I'm on official duty, traveling to Arlington National Cemetery for a memorial ceremony," Ethan replied evenly, indicating his documents. "My commanding officer arranged the booking." Brooks let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You're telling me the Army is booking its people in first-class seats for a ceremony? Are you a general, son?" "No, sir. I'm a sergeant." "A sergeant," Brooks repeated, savoring the word. He picked up the ticket confirmation. "This is highly irregular. We have a serious issue with people in costumes trying to get unauthorized upgrades. Is this for a comic book convention? Halloween come early?" The insult was so blatant, so unprofessional, that a few passengers in the nearby line gasped. Ethan felt a hot flash of anger, but he suppressed it instantly. He could feel the words of the Sentinel's creed echoing in his mind, "My standard will remain perfection. My dedication will not waver." Causing a scene was not an option. The uniform was bigger than his feelings. "Sir, this is the ceremonial dress uniform of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment," Ethan stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "It is worn only by authorization from the highest levels of the Army. My orders are all in order." Brooks smirked, turning to Karen. "Call security," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We need to verify if this gentleman is who he says he is, or if he's just playing soldier." The humiliation was a deliberate, public performance. Ethan stood his ground, a stoic statue in a rising tide of disrespect, feeling the weight of hundreds of silent eyes. 2 security officers arrived, their expressions a mixture of duty and reluctance. The older one, his badge reading Mike Torres, gave Ethan a subtle, almost imperceptible nod of respect. "Sergeant," Torres began, his tone apologetic, "I'm sorry for this, but Mr. Brooks has asked us to verify your documentation in a private screening area." "I understand, officer," Ethan replied calmly. "Protocol must be followed." As they stepped aside, Brooks addressed the growing line of onlookers. Apologies for the delay, ladies and gentlemen. We're just handling a minor security situation. He made it sound as if Ethan were a potential threat. In the stark white screening room, Officer Torres examined Ethan's military ID and travel orders with professional efficiency. "Everything is perfectly in order, Sergeant," he said, handing the documents back. "This is ridiculous." "Orders are orders," his partner, Lisa Evans, muttered under her breath. Martin Brooks entered the room, his skepticism undiminished. "Well, is it legitimate?" "Yes, sir," Evans confirmed. "He is exactly who he says he is. Sergeant Ethan Cole, the old guard, traveling on official Pentagon orders." Brooks circled Ethan, his eyes raking over the uniform with the air of a man appraising cheap merchandise. "All this pageantry," he scoffed. "Seems excessive for a simple flight. I wonder what the taxpayers think of the cost. This uniform represents the service and sacrifice of every soldier buried at Arlington, sir," Ethan said, his voice quiet but firm. "Its cost is measured in honor, not dollars." The statement seemed to enrage Brooks further. He stormed back out to the counter, Ethan and the security officers following. He snatched the ticket confirmation from the counter. "This first-class ticket," Brooks announced to the check-in agent, Karen, but loud enough for the passengers to hear. "How, exactly, did you acquire it, Sergeant?" "Personally. As I explained, my commanding officer arranged it through official channels. And we're supposed to believe that?" "These seats cost over $600, Brooks pressed, his voice dripping with accusation. "Did you use some kind of military discount code that isn't authorized for this fare class?" Before Ethan could answer, a woman in line spoke up. "For God's sake, leave him alone. Can't you see who he is?" Brooks shot her a venomous glare. "Ma'am, this is a security matter. Please mind your own business." He turned back to Ethan, his eyes glinting. "Since you cannot personally verify the purchase of this ticket, and its legitimacy is in question, I am deeming it invalid for security purposes." And then, in a gesture of ultimate contempt, Martin Brooks took Ethan's first-class travel confirmation and slowly, deliberately, tore it in half. He dropped the 2 pieces of paper onto the counter. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Karen, the agent, looked horrified. "We can, however, offer you a seat in economy," Brooks said with a triumphant smirk. 22B, a middle seat. "You can accept that, or you can find another way to get to your ceremony." The choice was clear. Argue, and betray the dignity of the uniform. Or accept the humiliation and uphold its honor. Officer Torres stepped closer to Ethan as he picked up the new, demeaning boarding pass. "Sergeant," he whispered, his voice tight with anger. "This isn't right. My brother served. This is wrong. I'll be filing a report." Ethan gave a slight nod of acknowledgement. "Thank you, officer," he said, his voice steady. "Some battles aren't worth fighting." He then turned and began the long walk toward the gate, the torn pieces of his dignity left behind on the counter. Boarding the aircraft was its own form of humiliation. The narrow aisle was a gauntlet of stares and whispers. Ethan had to remove his kepi hat to clear the doorway, tucking it carefully under his arm. His broad shoulders, accentuated by the ceremonial jacket, barely fit. The flight attendants averted their eyes, their professional smiles replaced by looks of awkward pity. It was a walk of shame, and every passenger was a witness. When he finally reached row 22, he found an elderly man in the window seat. The man's weathered face, etched with the lines of a long and difficult life, lit up instantly. A faded Marine Corps, globe and anchor, tattoo was visible on his forearm. "Well, I'll be damned," the man said, his voice a gravelly but powerful rasp. He made an effort to straighten up in his seat. "A tomb guard on my flight. It's an honor, son." "Good morning, sir," Ethan said, managing a small, polite smile as he stowed his hat and eased his large frame into the cramped middle seat. "Harold Bennett," the man said, extending a gnarled hand. Call me Harold. Marine Corps, retired. They put me out to pasture after 28 years. Sergeant Ethan Cole, Ethan replied, shaking his hand. The grip was firm, unyielding. I recognized that uniform the second you stepped on board, Harold said, his eyes twinkling. Saw what happened up front, too. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial growl. That pencil pusher in the cheap suit had no right. Disgraceful. Just a misunderstanding, I'm sure, Ethan said, defaulting to diplomacy. Bull, Harold snorted. That was disrespect, plain and simple. In my day, a man like that would get a lesson in manners he wouldn't soon forget. You should file a complaint the second we land. There are bigger battles to fight, Harold. This sparked a debate that lasted for the next 30 minutes. Harold, representing a generation that met disrespect with righteous indignation, argued that letting such an insult slide was a disservice to everyone who ever wore a uniform. Ethan, embodying the modern soldier, countered that the true victory lay in upholding the uniform's dignity by refusing to be dragged down to a bully's level. Son, Harold argued, a snake like that only understands one thing, consequences. If good men do nothing, the snakes win. Sometimes, Ethan countered gently, the best way to show strength is to not give them a fight they can win. My duty is to represent something larger than my own pride. Their conversation, a fascinating clash of two different eras of honor, drew the quiet attention of those seated around them. Passengers were captivated by the fiery old veteran and the quiet, stoic young soldier. It was a lesson in history and character, unfolding in the cramped confines of economy class. 30 minutes into the flight, their debate was cut short by a sudden, frantic cry from several rows back. Is there a doctor on board? We need medical assistance, immediately. The flight attendant, a young woman named Sarah, sounded panicked. Ethan turned to see a man slumped in the aisle, his wife shaking him, her face a mask of terror. Without a second's hesitation, Ethan unbuckled his seatbelt. Excuse me, he said to Harold. He moved down the aisle with a speed and grace that seemed impossible for a man his size in such a restrictive uniform. All eyes were on him. He knelt beside the fallen passenger, a middle-aged man who was motionless and pale. I'm trained in emergency medical response, Ethan said to Sarah, his voice cutting through the rising panic with calm authority. May I assist? Relief flooded Sarah's face. Yes, please. He just collapsed. Ethan's hands went to the man's neck, checking for a pulse. His movements were precise, economical, practiced. No pulse, he announced, his voice clear and commanding. He's in cardiac arrest. I'm initiating CPR. Please notify the captain and get the AED. As Ethan began chest compressions, the cabin fell into a stunned silence. The soldier in the costume was now a figure of absolute competence. He counted under his breath, a steady rhythm in the chaos. A man in the row behind them, who had identified himself as a doctor, moved to intervene. I'm a physician, the man said, a bit pompously. Perhaps I should take over. Ethan didn't miss a beat in his compressions. What's your specialty, sir? Dermatology, the man replied. Battlefield trauma care, Ethan said flatly. I can handle this. Please help keep the aisle clear. The dermatologist, humbled, immediately stepped back. Sarah returned with the AED. Ethan ripped open the passenger's shirt and applied the pads with practiced ease. The machine analyzed. Shock advised, the electronic voice droned. Clear. Ethan commanded. His voice filled the cabin. He pressed the button. The man's body convulsed. Ethan immediately resumed compressions. After another grueling cycle, he checked for a pulse again. A flicker of triumph crossed his face. I have a pulse, he announced. It's weak, but it's there. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing an emergency landing in Pittsburgh. Ethan stayed by the passenger's side, monitoring him, his quiet words of reassurance a lifeline to the man's terrified wife. "Stay with me, Mr. Carter," he said. "Help is on the way." When the plane landed, paramedics rushed aboard. "Suspected cardiac arrest," Ethan reported crisply, giving a textbook handover. "CPR administered, one shock delivered. Pulse restored but thready." The lead paramedic looked from the patient to Ethan's immaculate, sweat-stained uniform. "Textbook work," she said, shaking her head in admiration. "A few more minutes, and he would have been gone. You saved his life." James Carter's wife clutched Ethan's gloved hand, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she sobbed. "How can we ever repay you?" "No repayment necessary, ma'am," Ethan said softly. "I'm just glad I could help." In the chaotic Pittsburgh terminal, Ethan found a quiet corner and checked his watch. The diversion would make him late for the Arlington ceremony. He dialed his commanding officer. "Colonel Hayes," a crisp voice answered on the second ring. "Sergeant Cole reporting, sir. I'm experiencing a travel delay. The Pentagon shows your flight is on the ground in Pittsburgh, Sergeant. You should have landed in D.C. 20 minutes ago," Hayes said, his tone sharp. "Yes, sir. There was a medical emergency on board." "Were you involved?" Hayes asked, his voice shifting. "I provided assistance until paramedics arrived, sir." A dry chuckle came through the phone. "The captain of your flight already radioed ahead. Said a tomb guard performed life-saving CPR mid-flight." "That was you?" "Yes, sir." "Well done, Cole," Hayes said, a rare note of pride in his voice. "But that doesn't answer my first question. How in the hell did you end up in economy?" "I authorized first class." Ethan hesitated. "There was a seating issue at departure, sir." "What kind of issue?" Hayes pressed, his voice losing its warmth, becoming dangerously quiet. "It's not significant, sir." "Full report." "Now," Hayes commanded. Ethan straightened instinctively, as if the colonel were in the room. He recounted the events at O'Hare clinically and without emotion, the questioning of his uniform, the refusal of his valid ticket, the public reassignment to economy class. "On what grounds were you denied your assigned seat?" Hayes's voice was now ice-cold. "The terminal manager, a Mr. Martin Brooks, expressed concerns about my uniform and the legitimacy of my ticket, sir." "Are you telling me," Hayes said slowly, each word dripping with controlled fury, "that an airline employee discriminated against you because you were in the uniform of a United States Army Sentinel?" "There seemed to be skepticism that a soldier would be authorized for premium seating, sir." "And you accepted this?" "I deemed it inappropriate to create a scene that would reflect poorly on the tomb or the army, sir. The uniform represents something larger than my personal indignity." A long, heavy silence stretched across the line. Ethan could practically feel the temperature dropping. "Your restraint is commendable, Sergeant," Colonel Hayes said finally, his calm more terrifying than any shouting. "But this is not about your personal indignity. This is about respect for this army and the sacred duty you represent." "Which airline?" "American Airlines, sir. Terminal 3 at O'Hare." "I see," Hayes said. "Carry on to D.C., Sergeant. I'll handle this." At O'Hare, Martin Brooks was smugly reviewing flight manifests when his phone rang with a summons from the Director of Operations, David Larson. He walked into Larson's office to find a nightmare waiting for him. The room was filled with grim-faced people: Karen Walsh, the terrified check-in agent, Officers Torres and Evans, 2 suits from the FAA, and a man whose immaculate dress blues and a silver eagle on his shoulder screamed authority. "Martin," Larson began, his voice shaking with rage, "this is Colonel Robert Hayes of the 3rd Infantry Regiment. He's here about an incident involving a Sergeant Ethan Cole." Brooks went pale. The man in the costume." Colonel Hayes stepped forward, his eyes like chips of ice. "The man in the costume, Mr. Brooks, is a sentinel at the tomb of the unknown soldier. The same Sentinel who just saved a man's life on that flight. A man who might have died because your security protocols put him 20 rows away from his assigned seat. The FAA representative, Laura Adams, spoke next. Mr. Brooks, based on an official complaint from the Department of Defense and preliminary statements from your staff, the FAA is ordering a full operational audit of this terminal, effective immediately. All American Airlines flights from Terminal 3 are grounded until we can ensure your compliance with federal laws regarding the treatment of uniformed military personnel. Martin Brooks stared, his jaw slack, as the entire world he controlled crumbled around him because of one soldier he thought he could bully. 2 days later, Ethan stood at Arlington, his ceremonial duties complete. An aide approached him. "Sergeant Cole, you have visitors." In the reception area, Colonel Hayes waited with David Larson, the airline's director of operations. Larson looked tired and humbled. "Sergeant Cole," Larson began, "I am here to offer the sincere, profound apology of American Airlines. What happened at O'Hare was a failure on every level. It was unprofessional, discriminatory, and a stain on our company." "Thank you, sir." "Apology accepted," Ethan said simply. "We've made changes," Larson continued. "Mr. Brooks has been terminated. The FAA audit cost us millions, but it exposed a systemic issue of disrespect that we are now correcting. We are developing a new company-wide policy for active-duty military personnel, and we're calling it the Sentinel Protocol. We'd be honored to have your input." Colonel Hayes stepped in. "The passenger you saved, James Carter, has made a full recovery. His family is here in D.C. and is desperate to thank you." A look of genuine relief crossed Ethan's face. "That's the best news I've heard, sir." He considered the whirlwind of the last few days. The humiliation, the chaos, the incredible irony of it all. "Sir," he said, addressing both men. "Had Mr. Brooks not moved me, I would have been in the first-class cabin. I would have been too far away to help Mr. Carter in time." He paused, the realization settling over him. Sometimes, we end up exactly where we need to be, even if it's not where we planned. Larson nodded, a look of awe on his face. "Well said, Sergeant." Later, as Ethan prepared to leave, Colonel Hayes asked him a final question. "You were judged and disrespected because of the uniform you wear with such pride. How do you process that without letting it turn into bitterness?" Ethan looked out the window toward the tomb, gleaming in the distance. "Sir, the uniform doesn't get its honor from how people treat it. It gets its honor from how we, the wearers, act in it. Especially when it's hard. This is the story of a soldier and a stranger, of a turbulent flight from Chicago, of a uniform and a heartbeat that turned indignity into valor. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest tribute to the fallen is a life saved in the chaos of the present. So pause today. Think of the heroes you see and the ones you don't. How do you show respect? In a world of snap judgments, how do you honor the substance over the spectacle? Share your thoughts below. Your voice matters. Please comment with respect for all service members and their families. If this story moved you, share it, so that the echo of true duty can be heard a little farther. And subscribe for more stories that remind us of the best of who we can be.